This magnificent building behind me is the Mission San Luis Rey de Francia in Oceanside, California. It was established in 1798. It was the ninth of the California missions to be established. And like all of the missions in that system established by the Franciscan friars, it was adjoining a Native American village. In this case, a place called Quechua that was occupied by the Luiseno people. By the mid-1820s, the Mission San Luis Rey had become among the most prosperous, if not the most prosperous mission in the entire system of 21 missions up and down the California coast. It was home to over 2,800 people, maybe 3 times as large as the average California mission. Over 25,000 head of cattle ranged across several 100,000 acres of territory surrounding the mission. By 1830, this building here, which was constructed in 1815, was the largest building in California. There's a lot to read in the landscape of the mission at San Luis Rey, and so I thought it'd be fun to take a quick walk around the outdoor grounds of the mission and to think about what we can read about California's history from the landscape that remains here, as well as what we can read about the contemporary landscape of California and the understanding of the missions that is evident from the way this place is laid out and interpreted. So let's take a little walk. The mission buildings themselves, with their white stucco, the red tile work, sitting here in a very commanding position atop a hill over the San Luis Rey River Valley, have a kind of sense of rootedness, like they really belong here. 100 years worth of California dreaming and believing about that the roots of California were here in this Spanish mission architecture gives this place a sense that it really is the place where California's history begins. There's other evidence in the landscape that reinforces that story, that this place is connected to California's history so deeply. Here, these ruined adobe structures are part of the barracks that were constructed in the 1840s by the Mormon Battalion, which was a group of Americans from Utah who crossed the Sierra Nevada to support the American cause in the Mexican War, which led to the American conquest of California. And then throughout the compound are statues to the Stations of the Cross, reflecting that this is, of course, a religious place, that this is a mission established by the Franciscan order to promote Christianity, and it connects this place to a global Catholic Church. That sense of globalization is evident in the landscaping as well. Inside this courtyard is purportedly the oldest pepper tree in California, the first pepper tree in California, brought by a Franciscan priest from Peru in 1830 and planted here. And then the landscaping itself, this desert landscape of cactus, suggests the connections between this place and the Franciscan friars of Mexico who crossed that desert landscape and arrived here in Alta California in the 18th century. With all of that going on, the most remarkable thing about this place to me is that you will look long and hard on the outside of this compound, and it will be very hard to remember for whom this place was built, and in fact, who built it. The Luiseno people, California Indians, who were at the center and were the subjects of the mission story in the 18th century. But if we know the history of the California missions, then we know that these were places not only of faith and religious conversion, but also landscapes of labor. And the people who did that labor were native Californians. And so the place to begin looking for the imprint of the Luiseno people on the mission at San Luis Rey is to look at the things that they built and the places where they worked. One of those places is here. This is the lavanderia, which we can imagine in the 1820s, with almost 3,000 people in residence here in the missions, would have been daily in use as the cloth, cotton, and wool garments of the neophytes would have been washed. And we can imagine Luiseno women with baskets filled with cloth walking down these steps, over these bricks, to this stream bed, which has been manufactured to keep water in it, to make it easy to do wash. And if you look at the stones and the brickwork, you can see that they have been ground down by a generation of labor, of women on their knees with their hands on cloth, scrubbing that cloth against stones. And the very imprint of that work is here before us. And for me is a real powerful reminder of the lives of very difficult work every day that was part of the schedule and part of the reality of life in the California missions. Just down this way as well is another landscape of labor. And this is the brick kiln where all of these bricks would have been fashioned and where the adobe bricks made from mud would have been hardened into the building materials that built the mission itself. And so we come to the California missions like this one, the first place perhaps to really look for the life and work and legacy of California Indians in the mission landscape is in the brickwork itself. All of these materials were not only set on top of one another by native Californians, but the materials themselves were constructed by Indian labor. We've got one more place one more stop on our visit. Come on with me. Our final stop is also at the outskirts of the properties of the Mission San Luis Rey. And it's an early 20th century school building, which has been more recently converted into the Pablo Toc Hall and Conference Center. And the plaque above the door reads, "Named in memory and honor of Pablo Toc, Native American Luiseno scholar, born at Mission San Luis Rey de Francia in 1820, died in Rome, Italy in 1841. And so here, if we walk the outskirts of the grounds, which most visitors do not, we can find the singular piece of evidence of a very significant Native American figure in California's history, a very unique person, Pablo Toc, who was a 10-year-old, showed so much promise to his Franciscan fathers that he was taken from California with the secularization of the missions and brought to Mexico City, where he was trained to be a priest, and ultimately, by the time he was in his late teens, was brought to Rome, where he would continue those studies. He died there in Rome, swept away by epidemic disease like so many other California Indians in the years after the arrival of the Spanish. But before he died, Pablo Toc left among the most important records, certainly of Luiseno life, but of any of California Indians in their encounter with the mission system. He left a recollection of his own experiences here at Mission San Luis Rey, and also the experiences of his people, the Luiseno. And he also left behind a record of their language, a dictionary to translate the words and their sounds from Luiseno into Spanish, which remains among the more important documents produced by a California Indian in the early years of Spanish colonization. So here we are at the Mission San Luis Rey with a legacy and a landscape built by California Indians for California Indians, but where in the 21st century it's very difficult to read much at all about that legacy, about their impact, and about why this place ultimately is here. I encourage you to take a closer look at the California missions that you encounter and to subject them to the same kind of examination. And I hope that they're doing a better job at representing the full history of California's mission system and the people whose lives made it and the people who lost their lives here as well. The Mission San Luis Rey de Francia, Oceanside, California.